35,000 decisions every single day, and 300 of those decisions are about food. And so if we can make those ahead of time and make that in a really deliberate and intentional way, you're a lot better off, and not only you, but your entire family. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Everyday Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Maddie James, and today we're talking about meal planning because it has saved my life in so many ways. In all the days where I am just completely overwhelmed, meal planning has helped me make decisions about food that seem to overwhelm me more than anything else. It's interesting because I feel like I can tackle stress pretty decently throughout the day. Like if something springs up unexpected, I feel like at this stage in my life, I can adjust to changes pretty well. I can adjust, I can ask for help, I can switch it up. But the thing that wipes me out every single time if I don't prepare for it is when everyone in my family is like, "What's for dinner?" I'm like, you know what? Let's just forget it all. I quit. And what I really had to start doing, especially once I had Caliana, is that I really had to start being really intentional about meal planning. And the reason why I'm really excited about this episode is because I think a lot of us know of the concept of meal planning, but I don't know if a lot of us have implemented it, right? So even just like breaking down and preparing this episode for y'all, it was really great to just break down why this actually works. And what I realized is that meal planning that cares is really what is going to help you make decisions ahead of time and allow you to meal plan in a way that just makes your day and even your entire week a lot easier. Now, I take meal planning so seriously that we do monthly meal planning in And More, my private community. So we're actually gearing up to do it in a couple of days here. And I'm so excited because we do it every last Thursday of the month. And so it's really nice because I think what's really cool and I'm starting to understand is that, in business, people talk about co-working all the time. But I love the And More community because it gives us the opportunity to pretty much like do co-lifing together. And so when you are meal planning with a group of other women for their families, you really feel like you got your stuff together. And that's what I really like about having a community, just a designated place to do things like this together. And meal planning is one of those things that is going to allow you to eliminate that part of overwhelming your life, right? We talked about this in episode 3. You make 35,000 decisions every single day, and 300 of those decisions are about food. And so if we can make those ahead of time and make that in a really deliberate and intentional way, you're a lot better off, and not only you, but your entire family and whoever you're helping. So in this episode, we're going to discuss how to create a meal plan approach for your family that will save you money, work with your schedule, and improve your food choices. And I think that is what meal planning is all about. It's not just about just deciding what you're going to eat. Yes, that absolutely has something to do with it. But it is about saving money, making sure that you're keeping things within budget. It's about working with your schedule because every week looks different for most of us. And it's going to improve your food choices because we really got to keep our health in mind. Health is magic, and we've got to prioritize it, especially when we're meal planning. So first, let's just go ahead and ask the question and just break it down so we have an understanding, because words mean things. What is meal planning? And why is it important? Well, meal planning is deciding meals in advance. That's it. The mistake I used to make with meal planning is thinking that it was me deciding what I had to cook every single day for every single meal. And if you're on Maddie Mail, my newsletter, I send out the dinner menu every single week to you guys. And what I love about it is that it allowed me to be really human, really honest, and share with you guys because let me be honest, every single meal I'm not cooking, right? I'm married to somebody who cooks, thank God. But even if none of us, either one of us is cooking, we can use takeout, right? Or you can use a meal delivery service, or if you have a chef, or if there's a chef service locally around you and you can use that service, use that to your advantage as well. But meal planning has nothing to do with becoming the world's greatest cook for your family, but it has everything to do with deciding meals in advance. And once you have that full understanding, it's a complete game changer. What meal planning also is really great for is that it's going to save you time and it's going to save you money and it's going to allow you to make better choices. When you actually designate a time in your week, in your month, or even in your day just to simply plan meals out, you actually allow yourself to make better decisions. You also allow yourself to utilize your time more wisely, and if you're doing it right and you're buying things within season and you're buying things that are maybe on sale, maybe you have a coupon for, and you're buying things that your family actually eats, you're going to end up saving money. And whenever we can keep things within budget, things are less stressful regardless of what season we're in our lives. This was probably the thing that made me really excited about meal planning as a mom of young kids, and even just, being a wife as well, is that meal planning allowed me to set expectations for my entire family. So when you meal plan, what you get to do is you get to set expectations for everyone in your family, right? One, you don't have to do it exclusively by yourself. If you are married and your spouse cooks as well, or they like specific things, this is something that you can do together. This is something that you can also do and get the kids involved. Maybe you don't need to get them involved for every single thing that you're going to eat for the week, but maybe like there's a themed week. So maybe you guys do Taco Tuesday, or maybe you guys do a home cooked meal together on the weekend, and you can allow them to chime in and give you ideas as well. But what I love is that meal planning is something that everyone in your family is going to benefit from, and that it sets expectations. And when you set expectations, especially when you do it ahead of time, what it does is it allows everyone in your family, including yourself, to have something to look forward to. So if we all know that on Tuesday we're going to have shrimp tacos, we're all looking forward to that. If we all know that on Friday we are going to that pizza place that we've been wanting to go to, it sets a really amazing expectation and it allows us to have something to look forward to. So you're out here, you're saving time. You're out here, you're making better food choices. You're out here staying on budget. And when it comes down to it, meal planning that cares, and we're going to break that down in a minute, is really how to maximize a meal plan and make it work specifically for you and your family. Now, y'all know how I do. We always do an acronym because acronyms help us remember things. So yes, we're going to break down how a meal plan cares and how every time you use this cares framework for meal planning, it's going to help you guys out a lot. So one thing I'm really excited about is that while I was planning for this episode is that I realized that this is such a great way to help you out for the entire month. And I've created a resource called the Monthly Eats Planning Resource. So I'm going to break down eats in this episode, but if you are interested in getting this resource so you can get your meal plan together, not just for you, but for your entire family, head on over to maddiejames.com/community, get in the and more community, and get to this resource library so you can get this monthly eats planning guide. So the first thing in the CARES framework is you want to consider your time. Meal planning that cares allows you to consider your time. And all that means is you get to look at what your schedule is going to be for the next week. Now, when we're talking about meal planning in this context, I'm talking about meal planning a week ahead of time. Now, we like to meal plan in our community within a month because sometimes that can be really great, especially if you have a really busy month, you have a lot going on, maybe you have a lot of people helping you out. Just making those decisions that ahead of time can be helpful. But for most of us, meal planning a week ahead of time is pretty realistic and allows us to adjust accordingly if things change. So you have planned out your meals out far enough without going too far, and it allows you to pretty much stay not overwhelmed because you know what's coming up in the next few days, but it's not as daunting as knowing what's going to happen in like the next 2 months, you know? So in this context, I'm talking about meal planning within the week. So you want to consider your time or your schedule for the next week. What does it look like? Do you have meetings? Do you have to travel? Do the kids have extracurricular activities? Is your spouse going to be unavailable a couple of days because they have meetings errands, or events to attend. So really looking out your week before you make any kind of decision regarding food is huge, because based on what your schedule is will be a direct reflection on what kind of meals or who preparing the meal or how you're going to have a meal will happen. So the first thing you want to do when it comes to your meal plan is you want to consider your time for the next week. So do you have time to cook next week, right? So yes, takeout definitely will be helpful in some instances, but for the most part, we want to cook most of our meals or have our meals cooked for most of the time for health reasons. So what does your time look like next week? When can you do the cooking or in the preparation? Are you going to have to batch cook some freezer meals because you won't really have the time to cook in real time? Or do you have flexibility after your workday to cook before dinner time, right? Do you need to tell your spouse to do the cooking on particular days because you have a really full workday, or you're going to be at school with the kids because they have something going on like an extracurricular activity or a special event? So it's really great to look at your schedule and your family's entire schedule and consider the time you guys actually have, not only for meals, but for actually preparing the meals. Doing this first and foremost allows you to set yourself up for success and allows your meal plan to work for you and your time. So after you consider your schedule for the next week, what you want to do is audit an inventory. So you want to audit what worked the week before, and then you want to inventory what you already have in your freezer, in your fridge, and in your pantry. Now, I am squeezing the I in there, but for the sake of the acronym, it is still CARES, right? But A is for audit. So when a meal works, I want to remember this because I absolutely want to put this in my rotation when it comes to meals throughout the month. Now, my kids are small, and I don't know if your kids are like mine, but they're picky. Everybody has a preference. This person likes spaghetti sauce with ground turkey, but this person likes it with ground beef. This person likes white sauce. This person likes red sauce. All the things. So you definitely have to take people's preferences in mind, right? And listen, even though we are all trying to be better than the last generation, trying to be better than our parents, I understand a lot of those days where our parents are just like, this is what you're eating, okay? Because I done spent all this time cooking and preparing this meal, right? But thankfully, many of us are in a situation where we can give our kids options, where we can think ahead of time and consider these preferences here and there. And so whenever something actually works, audit that and pretty much keep yourself like a little meal plan report card. If a meal worked in the morning, like it was a quick breakfast and you weren't sure if they were going to like the muffins and they ended up liking it, how can you incorporate it in the next week or even in the next couple of weeks because it's something that worked? If you pulled out a new Pinterest recipe and you thought it was going to be a hit because it had all of the ingredients that your family loves and it didn't work out, maybe that's something you just save for yourself for lunch when you're only making a meal decision for yourself. So just taking the time, and it doesn't have to be long. It can be anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes just to audit what you did the week before is incredibly helpful so you can know what to repeat and you can know what to put aside or just save for yourself. Now, this is something that I have to get better at, and I think over the years I have certainly done that. But let me tell you something. I was not great at inventory, right? So if I just felt like eating something, I would just be like, let's go buy the ingredients. And then I would come home and there would already be 2 or 3 of them. And my husband would always ask me, he's like, are we just not checking? Are we just not checking what we have? So making sure that inventory is a part of your meal planning process is massive, right? And it's also a direct reflection of showing that your meal plan actually cares about what you already have in your house. You want to look in your freezer, see what you already have. For us, because we're a family of 5 and we eat pretty much most proteins, a lot of times we have some sort of protein that can be the entree within our freezer. So what's really great is to just go through the freezer, see if you've got some chicken thighs, see if you've got some ground turkey or ground beef, or just see what you have going on. The same thing you want to do in your pantry. You want to inventory what you have in your pantry. What pastas do you have? What sauces do you have? Prime example of me not doing this last night, I was just so sure I was going to make spaghetti and did not have marinara sauce. I typically have like 3-4 jars of marinara sauce, but it was the one time I did not check. And that's why just every single week, just doing a quick inventory to make sure that you didn't drop the ball, because sometimes that will happen. Ask me how I know. You just want to make sure that you have all the ingredients to make sure that your meal plan can go as planned. So once you have inventoried everything that you have in your freezer, in your fridge, because also let's admit it, sometimes we'll buy some produce and we won't necessarily use all of it. So you might have some produce that can be some really great ingredients as a side for your meals or for flavor in an entree, and you just want to check what you have going on. So after you consider your schedule, and then after you audit an inventory, what you want to do is you want to research. Now, the research goes twofold. It's pretty much like an 80-20 rule. You want to research recipes based off of what you already have in your inventory and even based off of what you've audited. So if you have cilantro and it probably has about 2 or 3 days left, can you find any recipes that allow you to use cilantro? If you have certain types of pastas or certain types of beans in your pantry, what's a way that you can, or what's a recipe that you can research to use those items? If you've got some canned black beans, right? What's something that you can make with black beans? Is it a taco bowl? Is it tacos itself? Just looking up recipes based off of what you already have in your inventory is a huge game changer. And it's a way to use what you have, which allows you to save money. And it also helps prevent food waste because you don't just have all of these food items sitting there because you never use them. So you absolutely want to research recipes based off of what you already have in inventory. The other thing you want to research, because we've talked about it, meal planning isn't solely about cooking, is researching restaurants. So if in fact you do have to do takeout because you guys are going to be at your oldest soccer game, wherever the soccer game is at, what restaurants are around so you can make healthy choices or at least a preference for what everybody will like to eat. So if you know that one person likes chicken and the other person swears by pasta, but the other person loves tacos, is there a restaurant that can cater to everybody's preferences? Or if you know that all of you, because I know that's what my family needs to do, we could all use healthier meals. What's a restaurant nearby where you're going to be at that day during the week that allows you to select a restaurant that has healthy choices that you guys would actually eat? So researching recipes, and then for that 20% where you are going to have takeout, can you go ahead and research restaurants ahead of time? Researching restaurants ahead of time, too, can even be for something as simple as date night. Chris and I do date night every Friday. So if we decide to go to a restaurant or we're like, hey, we want to try this restaurant out, or we're even going somewhere we've been before, I love to pull up the menu on the restaurant's website and just see what they have going on. So when I get there, I don't have to deliberate on what I want to eat because I've already taken a look at it and I know what they have going on. So it's a great way to set expectations for yourself and not just your family for even special moments like date night. So E is for eats planning. Okay. So EATS, if you read the book, is my framework for meals. EATS stands for entree, appetizer, treat, and sustenance. It's the way I build every single meal for myself, for my family to stay sane. So one thing that was really tough for me, especially when I first had Mesa, who is our oldest, was just like creating variety on a plate. And sometimes when I would put several things on her plate, I was like, everything is beige, so this isn't really giving nutrient dense, And so one thing I wanted to do was to figure out a way to create meals that actually had balance and variety, and that could work for both kids and could work for me and Chris as well. And so that's how EATS was formed. And so it pretty much works like you think it does, right? It's pretty cut and dry. It's pretty elementary, which is why I love it. It's easy to remember and it's actually easy to follow. And it works for just about every single diet, whether you're vegan, whether you're paleo, whether you're keto, whether you're like us and you guys pretty much eat everything, right? Because you don't really have too many crazy allergies or anything like that. This works for just about every single diet, and it works for every single time of day for your meal. So it works for breakfast. It works for lunch. It's literally the only way I'm able to come up with a balanced lunch for my kids when I make their school lunch. And it absolutely helps with dinner. And what I love is that entree is usually the main thing. It's usually the star on your plate. This can be everything from chili. This could be a turkey and cheese sandwich. This could be a piece of air fried salmon, right? So, but this is just your main course. This is your entree, the main idea of your meal. And it's usually the thing that is providing the most protein in your meal. So your entree is usually the star of your meal. Now, your appetizer is simply your side. What is going to go with your entree? Is it going to be brown rice? Is it going to be sweet potato fries? Is it going to be pretzels? Whatever it is, you just want to select an appetizer, which is basically a side portion that is going to complement the entree, right? So if it's tacos, it could be tortilla chips, you know? Then next up, you have treat. And I really love treat because a treat is just simply something that you're going to look forward to eating with your meal. This is why it's treat and not sweet, because a treat is not exclusive to it being sweet. A treat can be a dinner roll or a crescent roll, or it can be, some fruit on the side. It's pretty much just that little indulgent thing that people look forward to when it comes to their meal. For my kids, it's usually fruit, depending on what type of fruit it is. It can be, for me, it's certainly anything that is a carb, so it could be a dinner roll or anything that's like buttery and doughy that is going to be with dinner or even lunch. Last but not least is sustenance, and that's going to be your portion of food that is going to be the most nutrient dense. This typically ends up being vegetables or fruits. For me, it's usually whatever the vegetables are. So it can be green beans, it can be sauteed spinach, it could be a baked sweet potato, whatever have you. But it's just something that's noticeably nutrient dense. So even if you just take one bite or your kid just takes one bite, they get something that is filled with vitamins and minerals and something that gives them energy for the rest of the day, if not for the next day. Sustenance can also be fruits. And for me, whenever I am making the kids' school lunch, typically they're getting 2 fruit servings, or they might get like grapes and carrot sticks, or they might get grapes and half a banana. And, maybe the banana is the sustenance because I know they need the potassium, but the grapes is the treat that they need something to look forward to. And so it's really about making eats work for you and your family. And eats is also really helpful because it allows you to cater to everyone's preferences without losing focus on what matters. So my oldest is allergic to coconut, right? So while I may be able to put some popcorn that is popped with coconut oil in the January's lunchbox, I'm not going to be able to put it in Maze's lunchbox because she's allergic. But then I can still give her an appetizer that is going to be something that goes with her turkey and cheese sandwich, like potato chips or pretzels. But what it does is Eats is kind of like this Tetris way to build everybody's meal in a really balanced way and to still cater to preferences. And I love using this to plan out my meals. So instead of meal planning, I call it Eats planning because I use this framework so I can make sure that each of us has balanced meals throughout the week. Last but not least in the CARES framework is shop for your groceries. You've got to do all this planning before you go shopping. Girl, I used to be the queen of shopping before writing the thing down, before checking if anything was in my pantry, in my freezer, or anything of the like. And I would always set myself up for failure. I would always not have all the ingredients for a meal that I wanted to make, or I would have double, if not triple of something while lacking something. And so you want to make sure that you're considering your entire schedule. You want to make sure you're auditing what worked and inventorying what you already have, researching recipes and restaurants on those days you have takeout, and you want to do your eats planning. You want to go throughout each and every single meal of the day a week ahead of time. You want to cover breakfast for yourself, for your partner, for your kids. You want to do that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you want to do that throughout the day. So throughout the entire week. Because when it comes down to somebody asking you, what's for dinner or what are we eating today, you're able to answer that question without overwhelm. And you can set a clear expectation, not just for yourself, but for your family as well. Now, one way I like to shop is by, of course, making a list. So once I make my eats plan, what I like to do is then cross-reference that with what I have in inventory. And then I make my list of the items I don't have that I'll need specifically for those meals, right? And I check everything from spices to condiments to canned goods to dry foods to freezer foods to foods that just need to be simply refrigerated, okay? So you want to make sure you take in consideration your eats planning and then cross-reference it for making your grocery list. Do not play yourself and go grocery shopping without a list. Even if you have to do one of those pop-ins, stop for 5 minutes, open up your notes app and make a list. I'm telling you, it will save you time and it will save you money. And it is the meal planning hill that I will die on. You also want to make sure that you're listing things out, even if you're ordering groceries or ordering groceries for pickup. Typically we order groceries and have them delivered on Saturdays. So I'll usually make my meal plan on Thursday. I'll usually make the order on Friday, so it is scheduled for Saturday. And that just usually works best for my family because then I can kind of transition into the week having the groceries I already have for school lunches, breakfast, and all of that. But something like this week, yesterday, I actually went into the grocery store myself and did the shopping because after church, we just felt like it. We went for a drive. The kids were just kind of chilling out and we just wanted to take a drive and I wanted to go to a particular grocery store. So Chris drove me there and I went into the grocery store, but I made a list before I went in there and the list was a direct reflection on my eats plan. So we want to make sure that we've got the eats plan together before we even start our grocery list. But the listing is going to be relevant for you whether you go into the grocery store yourself, you're doing pickup, or you're doing delivery. Do not do it without the list and make sure you cross-reference all of the ingredients in your recipes. That's why the research portion is really huge to make sure you have everything you need. The worst is when you're making something that has to do with lemon and you just overlooked lemon in the ingredients. And then you're like, okay, I don't have a lemon. It's the story of my life. So go ahead and just make sure you double and triple check everything while you're making your grocery list before you go shopping. So once you're done shopping and the groceries are home, whether you picked them up, whether they were delivered, you absolutely want to prep your groceries as best as you can. One of the easiest ways to do this, if you only do one thing, I say pre-wash all your fruit and veggies and prep them accordingly. So make sure they're washed thoroughly, make sure they are dried and stored appropriately so you get a longer shelf life out of them. But just doing this one simple step, y'all, actually will save you so much time. I can't tell you how much easier it is to just grab fruit in the morning, throw it on top of some Greek yogurt and drizzle some honey on it. And that's a quick, easy breakfast for my kids because I already pre-washed the fruit. And so this is something that I actually got from Chris. He was so good at washing the berries ahead of time. And I'm like, why haven't I been doing this? This is such a small yet simple step. And just making sure that your berries or whatever fruit are dried completely and stored appropriately so you get the most shelf life out of it is also a really great way to make sure you get bang for your buck when it comes to your produce and just your groceries in general. One thing you can also do is also prep your protein and sides for something like lunch. If you work from home like I do, just having that kind of stuff available, just cooking like a pot of brown rice or jasmine rice or whatever it is you're going to have, and just thinking about what you're going to eat for lunch and knowing what you're going to eat for lunch and prepping that ahead of time is always nice. It's so tempting to press your phone and open up Uber Eats and order something that probably isn't super great for you. I know I am certainly guilty of it, but just having things specifically for lunch if you work for home is really great. And anything that you can batch ahead of time so you have it is also really helpful. You can do this with things like chilies or soups, whatever have you. You can just cook up a big batch of something and freeze it for days that you're super busy. You won't have time to cook, but you don't want to eat takeout because you want to eat something that is home cooked and a lot more nutritious for you and your family. So if you have time to do that, I always encourage you to prep your fruits and vegetables, batch some options for lunch, and certainly if you have the space and the time on a weekend, batch cook and make yourself some freezer meals. So y'all, when it comes to meal planning that cares, you want to make sure that you're doing these 5 things. absolutely consider your schedule and your time for that following week first and foremost. That is going to be the thing that sets you up for actual success, because to know how much time you have will dictate what kind of meal you can actually prepare and actually have. Then you want to make sure you audit an inventory. Audit what worked. Audit what happened in this past week. If it worked, repeat it. If it didn't, don't bring it up again, or just save it specifically for yourself for lunch. And then you want to inventory what you already have in your fridge, in your freezer, and in your pantry. Once you do that, then you want to research recipes. Research recipes based off of what you already have in your inventory, and then mix and match and figure out how you want to lay out your plan for meals for the next week. You want to get into eats planning next. Eats planning is making sure that you're planning your entrees, appetizers, treats, and sustenance for each meal for every single day of the week for you and your entire family. So obviously you guys may have breakfast all together, but lunches are going to look different because you make the kids' school lunch and it may look different than what you are going to eat. But you want to make sure that you plan accordingly, so when you get to shopping, you can shop for the appropriate ingredients to make sure you have exactly what you need. Last but not least is shopping. When you shop, whether you are going to the store yourself, whether you're going to do grocery pickup or you're doing grocery delivery, make a list. Make a list of all the ingredients you're going to need for each of these meals, and then cross out what you already have in inventory and simply buy what you need, okay? This is going to help with saving money. This is absolutely going to help you with saving time. And especially if you can focus on doing things like eating things that are in season, that's actually going to help you both health-wise, and it's going to be very, very great for your budget. Once you shop and you get the groceries at home, prep things ahead of time. Even if you can just wash fruits and vegetables, that's going to save you some time throughout the week. But also doing things like batching your lunch options, especially if you work from home. But even if you don't, if you're packing your lunch to go to work, that's going to be helpful. And of course, if you can batch cook some freezer meals so you have something in the future to reference whenever you don't want to cook or you don't have the time to cook like you thought you would, you can just bust out a freezer meal and have something in the nick of time. And that, my friends, is meal planning that cares. Well, that does it for this episode of the Everyday Magic Podcast. If it helped, let me know. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. And please leave a rating and review, because that helps people find the podcast. Of course, for this particular episode, we're going to be providing you with the Eats Monthly Planning Guide over in the And More community. Simply head on over to maddiejames.com/community to join and get access to the resource library and the Eats Monthly Planning Guide. All right, y'all, that does it. I will see you next time. Remember that every day matters, so you might as well make it magic. Love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.